Beautiful to be together with you all. I know I was only gone a day, but it's such a blessing to come back home. We'll start as usual with a question that's come in advance, and then we'll open it up to any questions that anyone here might have. Which is more helpful or necessary on a spiritual path, marriage or being single? It seems like the opportunity to learn within the structure of a committed relationship cannot really be matched. It's like saying, which is better for you, apples or oranges? Well, they're both beautiful. Apples have got certain, it actually is more like saying, which is better for you, oranges or asparagus? Right? Completely different category of food. One's a fruit, one's a vegetable. But each of them has wonderful nutrients, wonderful vitamins, wonderful minerals. But they're different. And in the body, we actually need both. You can't say either or. Well, instead of asparagus, I'm going to have an orange. You know, a nutritionist will say, well, that's great. The vitamin C is wonderful for you. All of whatever else oranges give is great. And you still have to eat your vegetables. Now, in terms of our life choices, fortunately, it's not that we actually have to have everything. We can have just one. But trying to say which is better is just as futile as trying to compare oranges and asparagus. Each of them is better for a different type of person, with a different type of dharma, even at a different time of their lives. You know, even for those who are married and who do go through the, what we call Grihastha Ashram phase of life, even for them, according to traditional Indian teachings and truths and practices, after you spend your 20 years or 25, some of them do four phases of 20 years each, some do 4 phases of 25 years each. I guess it depends on whether you belong to the group of people who think 80 is the average lifespan or the group who believe 100 is the average lifespan. But in any case, lifespan gets divided into these 4 what are called ashrams. The first one is your studies. You're supposed to just study. Contrary to popular belief, it's not the partying ashram. It's the ashram of learning and studying. Most of us forget that and we think it's just all about having a good time. But actually the brahmacharya ashram, up through either 20 or 25, depending on which cycle you subscribe to. I like 25. I tend to believe that people who live healthy lives will live long, if we're supposed to, and if not, and if we die early, then either way. But it can hurt to have the view that we're going to live to be 100. So the first 25 are our years of study in school, but also outside of school. It's the time where we learn about ourselves, about the world, about our place in the world. It's why the education that's given in families by parents or in the community is so critical. That's where we're getting what we call sanskaras, these impressions, the values, the ethics. Then, of course, is the grihastha ashram phase, the phase of being married with a family, if that is your dharma. But even for those whose dharma it is, after that, by 50, you enter what's called the vanprastha ashram phase, which is those who are detaching from the world. And so it's okay. By that time, chances are your kids are grown. They probably have jobs of their own. Maybe they're even already married. But in any case, they're basically set. They no longer need you to be micromanaging them or providing for them. And so you start to disengage from that, not from the world itself. That's a myth. It's more of a mistranslation, you could say. It's not about disengaging from the world. It's disengaging from your attachments to the world. So in those 25 years of my householder life, family, career, it's all about me. Right? It's my attachment, my wife or my husband, my kids, my job, my house, my car, my bank account, my career. When we enter the vanprastha ashram phase, it's not that we physically necessarily up and leave the world. It's that we disengage from those attachments to mind, to this very small world view. And we start to expand that into the awareness that we are actually one with all, that there's no need to be so stuck, and that it actually now is no longer either necessary, and it certainly isn't helpful. There was a time it was necessary, now it's not necessary. We disengage. And we anchor ourselves in a much broader world view and self-view. For 25 years it was, I'm so-and-so's mother, or so-and-so's wife, or so-and-so's father, or so-and-so's boss, or the head of so-and-so company. But then it's, oh, actually that's not who I am. And so we enter the vanprastha ashram. And then, regardless of what the first 3 phases of your life have been like, the last phase for everyone is supposed to be the phase of sannyas, of a total detachment from the attachments. And that's subtle, but it's critical. It is not a detachment from the world itself, but it's a detachment from my attachment to the various aspects of the world, whether it's an attachment to my wrinkle-free face, my non-sagging skin, an attachment to my role as a brilliant leader, business person, whatever my job may have been. As we enter that sannyas phase, we're at a time of life where chances are a lot of our skill set is no longer quite where it was a few decades earlier. And we have to accept that. And we let go of the attachment to it. Some of our skill set, like wisdom, is much deeper, much more. Understanding is much more, much deeper. But no, chances are you aren't going to be out there, playing basketball with the neighborhood kids and, beating them. or running companies, or doing whatever you did in your phase of life that was dedicated to that. So the Sannyas Ashram is this phase where we detach from our attachments, our attachment to our relationships. If we had a spouse, chances are one or the other is getting sick and perhaps moving on, leaving their bodies. Our children and now even grandchildren, they've got their own lives. Yeah, it's nice to see them, but it's no longer the phase of life where it's about being attached, thoroughly engaged. It's, all right, now I'm going to be dropping the body soon, any day now. I better anchor in something other than the body. When it comes time to dropping that body, am I going to be terrified because I'm letting go of the only me I know? Because I actually believe that I will cease to exist? Hence, it's terrifying. Truly terrifying. This is why everybody's so afraid of death. I will cease to exist. Well, the sannyas phase of life is the time to connect with that I that won't cease to exist. Right? When we pray asatoma sadgamaya tamsoma jyotirgamaya mrityordma amritam gamaya. We're not praying to God, lead me from death to immortality in the way of we're saying to God, oh God, please make my physical body the exception to your rule. Please make my body the one that's not going to degenerate. We're not saying that. What we're saying is, oh God, lead me from the attachment to the self that is the body, to the identification with the self that is not the body. And that's the prayer. So the sannyas phase of life is that. Now, some people go straight from brahmacharya to sannyas. Thoroughly bypass the grihastha or vanprastha ashram. Some people go brahmacharya, grihastha for a little while, not maybe the full 25 years, and then straight into sannyas. There isn't a way to say which is better. What's critical is to say that whichever you are in, that's your path to God. There's no guru, no real guru I know, who would let a married person with dependents, whether it was a spouse, whether it was children, who were dependent upon them, take sannyas and leave them. What they would say is, that is your spiritual path for now. Be patient. Things will shift. But I've never heard of what I'm going to call a real guru, as in someone who really brings light, who really isn't operating from their own agenda, but is just bringing light for you, who is just a channel, a vehicle of divine light, who doesn't have their own selfish motives of, oh, this person's going to leave their family and then come and be my, best devotee. I've never heard of a real guru say, oh yeah, leave the family, no problem. They always say, fulfill your duties. Take care of those who are dependent. And as the questioner asked, yeah, there's a lot to be learned Being a sannyasi is no easy feat. But being married with kids and a family, a joint family, no easy feat. So there's deep challenges inherent in both. And in both cases, the situation is, how can you use that path to get close to God? Because wearing saffron clothes or white clothes, sadly, does not grant us instant enlightenment. It doesn't instantaneously unhook us from fetters and chains and attachments. You can leave it off, sweetie, that's fine. Yeah, you can leave it off. It's fine. So changing your clothes, or changing with whom you live under a roof, doesn't grant you automatic enlightenment or awakening. Different paths are right for different people in their life, in different phases of their life. You'll know, check in with yourself of what feels right. And by the way, in many of the cases, you can change. Meaning, once you're a sannyas, you can't change. I mean, you could, it's just not suggested. Nobody's going to throw you in jail, but it's just not part of the Dharma. But you could certainly live a grihastha life, and then once you no longer have dependents, or should you choose not to have children, should you marry someone who's also on the path, you could very easily shift into sannyas. Or if you think you might want to take sannyas, you enter what we call brahmacharya, which is different than just the first 25 years of study. And it's really a phase of, I think this is the path that I want to walk. In many traditions, people are brahmacharis for 10, 12 years before they take sannyas, to make sure that it's really, really the path that you want to walk. So feel into what's right, and then whichever you choose, use that as the way to get closer to God. Most important thing is, don't regret your choice. Don't regret it. Don't allow yourself to convince yourself that that choice is the reason for your problems. And you see it both ways, of course. You see married people who just wish they could leave everybody behind and move to the mountains, move into an ashram, live in a cave. And you see grumpy sannyasis. So it works both ways. But regret is never something that's useful. And so just recognize that whatever path you're in, that's your dharma, at least for this phase. Use it. Use it to get closer to God. That's what it's there for. Both with their beautiful benefits and both with their beautiful challenges. But in every case, the destination, the goal, is always self-realization, God realization. And both paths are beautiful for it. In a relationship, obviously, the challenge is not letting your buttons get pushed, right? Not letting yourself get made to believe that you are the role. Not allowing yourself to believe that your sole dharma is to fulfill someone else's agenda, or to prevent them from having to struggle in their life or face difficult moments. That's not our dharma. So yeah, whatever path you choose, just pray for the strength and the clarity to use that path to get closer to God. And whatever path you're in, the meditation is the same. That anchoring and grounding in our consciousness, and then allowing the consciousness to expand. That's the same. Yeah, in a grasti phase, you might have to negotiate when is your meditation time. But I know plenty of married people who make sure to have plenty of structured meditation time. And I know sannyasis who don't. So, again, either way. But whatever path you have, just walk it. And walk it fully. It'll take you there. Does anyone here have a question? If there's any questions here, I'd be happy to take them. Yes. तो आप हाँ बिल्कुल हिंदी में बात करेगा, वो माइक आपको दे देंगे.
जैसे आप खुश रहती हैं, स्माइलिंग फेस रहता है, आनंद में रहती है, वैसा बाकी लोग क्यों नहीं हो सकते, या मैं क्यों नहीं हो सकती? उसके लिए मुझे क्या करना चाहिए?
बहुत बढ़िया. So she asked, as I am smiling and happy, why is she not smiling and happy, and what does she need to do to be smiley and happy? So I'll do it kind of back and forth in Hindi and English. देखिए, आपको सबसे पहले स्वयं से यही पूछना है कि मेरा मन में मुझे क्या लगता है कि मुझे हैप्पीनेस के लिए ज़रूरी होगी. जैसे जिससे आप पूछते हैं तो सब कहते हैं कि हाँ वो तो मैं बहुत खुश रहती, लेकिन ये मेरे से ठीक से बात नहीं करते, टाइम पे आते नहीं है गार्ड, कोई सहयोग नहीं देते हैं मुझको, मुझे ही अकेले सब कुछ करना पड़ता, फिर कोई प्यार भी नहीं मिलते, है ना? तो हमने अपनी हैप्पीनेस जो है दूसरों की शब्दों में, दूसरों की एक्शंस में ने ऐसे जोड़ दिया. अगर आप जिस तरह से मैं चाहती हूँ, अगर आप ऐसे जिएंगे तो मैं खुश हो जाऊंगी. अगर आप ऐसे नहीं बात करेंगे मेरे से तो फिर मैं उदास हो जाऊंगी. तो देखो, मैंने मेरी खुशी किसी और के हाथ में डाल दिया, और यही प्रॉब्लम है. खुशी तो मेरे में है, मुझ में है, लेकिन इसको पूर्ण करने के लिए मैंने किसी और को जिम्मेदारी दिया. और कभी कभी वो कोई व्यक्ति नहीं है, कभी कभी जैसे मैंने स्टॉक मार्केट में डाल दिया, ऊपर जाएगा मैं खुश रहूँगी, नीचे गिरेगा उदास हो जाऊँगी. या मैंने मौसम में, आज शादी है, सारे शादी बाहर हमने रखा, बारिश आए, खूब सारे नाराज हो गए, है ना? पूरी उदास, पूरा नाराज, सुंदर सा शादी सत्यानाश हो गया, है ना? तो अब तो मौसम में मैंने अपनी खुशी डाल दी, जो चीज़ जिसके ऊपर मेरा कोई कंट्रोल नहीं है. I've given them my happiness. That's the problem. अपनी खुशी, अपनी शांति अपने हाथ में ही होना चाहिए. I shared with her, I said, the issue is, if you say to most people who say they're not happy, why are you not happy? Well, inevitably they're going to give some excuse that rests on someone or something else. Someone is not being nice to me. Someone's not treating me the way that I'd like them to. The stock market, the weather, I had a beautiful wedding planned outside, gorgeous summertime outside wedding, then it rained. Everything got ruined. I've put my happiness, I've hooked it into something over which I have no control. Someone else's words, someone else's actions, someone else's choices, the stock market, the weather. And so inevitably, I'm not going to have any kind of sustained happiness. The only way to have sustained happiness is to only put it in your own hands. And to recognize कि सामने वाले जो करेंगे तो करेंगे, वो तो उनका कर्म है, उसका फल उनको खाना पड़ेगा. But my happiness should not be wrapped up in someone else's karmic package. As long as I think that my inner world is dependent on the outer world, then I will never have sustained happiness. यदि मुझे लगता है कि परिस्थिति के हिसाब से मेरी स्थिति हो, मेरी स्वस्थिति हो, तो फिर प्रॉब्लम हो जाएगी. क्योंकि परिस्थिति तो keeps changing. The outer situation keeps changing. And as long as I've decided that my inner situation is dependent upon the outer situation, I'm going to keep constantly changing, like going up and down with the waves of the ocean. So we have to make a decision that I'm going to choose joy in as many situations as I can. And it's not superficial. It's not about a denial of the world. It doesn't mean that what's going on in Ukraine doesn't wrench my heart out. It doesn't mean that thinking about people dying of hunger or dying of so many other things, or our earth being polluted and decimated, it causes me great pain. But the pain it causes me has one of two outcomes. Either it catalyzes me to action, things that I can actually do something about. So I may not be able to feed the world, but I can try to make as many people vegetarian as I possibly can, which puts all of that grain back into the distribution cycle, allows it to be there. I can abstain fully from alcohol so that all of the grain that goes into the production of alcohol can stay there in the distribution cycle and actually feed people. So sometimes that pain catalyzes action. And then there are things where you realize, really there isn't anything I can do. If I were here in a different incarnation, maybe I would have the power to change what was happening in Ukraine. In this particular incarnation, aside from prayers and trying to spread love and peace and oneness as much as possible so that we don't have it happen in more and more situations, it's all I can do. But that pain leads to an inner experience of expansion, because I become aware that the pain of those living there is my pain. And even though I can't do anything about it, I can allow it to shift my consciousness. I can grow spiritually from it, such that I can experience on some level that pain and know that we are one. And so in any case, when I say choose joy, it's not superficial, it's not denial, it's not repression. It's not the pushing away of the dark because we only want to live in the light. It's a very, very conscious choice that says, and this is going to sound, this may sound weird, but you've got to just trust me. It's the conscious choice to even choose joy in the midst of the sorrow. That there is even the possibility to choose to live in joy inside even while my heart is breaking. And even as tears pour down my face, to nonetheless be able to anchor in an experience of joy. And if you haven't actually had that experience yet, just trust me that it's possible. That we actually are much deeper beings than we give ourselves credit for. And that in order to maintain joy, you don't have to push away pain. That actually they can coexist as long as you're able to allow your experience of yourself to expand. And so, yeah, happiness is a very conscious choice, that the moments of our life are so precious. And there's always so much to be upset about. Matlab, nobody talks to you the way that we'd like everybody to talk to us. Nobody acts the way that we'd like. इतने लोग मेरे से पूछते हैं कि आप अमेरिका से आकर इंडिया में कैसे काम करते हैं? And maintain your sanity. I was saying, so many people ask me, coming from the world I come from in America, how do you work in India and maintain your sanity and your joy? I mean, it's one thing to be here for a spiritual holiday. It's another thing to actually try to get things done. And the only way is to consciously choose joy, which enables you to have a very good sense of humor, which enables you to take all sorts of challenging situations and not let them steal the joy. It's like, okay, yeah, here I am way busier than perhaps I had envisioned I was going to be today. Or, okay, here I am in a situation where somebody was supposed to do something and they didn't. And maybe it was even a situation where they strung me along lying that it was done, and only at the last minute you find out it wasn't done. And there's 1,001 things that happen working anywhere in the world, but especially working in India. And there's so many opportunities. In families, in communities, in office spaces, in religious spaces. So many opportunities to get upset. But we choose. कुछ भी हो जाए, मेरी खुशी, मेरी शांति, मेरे हाथ में है. मेरे हाथ में है. वो किसी और के हाथ में नहीं है, मेरे हाथ में है. आप कोशिश करिएगा, हो जाएगा. Are there any other questions? Yes, sure.
Sadhviji, namaste. As you said, the God, the divine is within us. And that is, there is, I'm not exception to be God. God is in everyone. And that's what when we realize we start respecting everyone, we start loving everyone, the affectionate that all comes that when we realize that God is in everyone. Now, our outside behavior, as you said, that our our responses towards the outside of the world is within our, is in our hand or is in our mind, is in our behavior. But sometimes what happens, in fact, being good or being knowing that God is there in the in the person who is in front of me, He is sorting on me, He is lying on me, He is accusing all these. But everything on me, right? And I know that I am not wrong. I did not do anything wrong. How to manage those conflicts, right? That is the most important. I struggle managing those conflicts in the real life, right? Thank you. Yeah.
Sure. First of all, this is why I believe this is why we have scriptures the way we have them. If you look at our epics, look at the Ramayana, look at the Mahabharata, they are full of struggle. Where did Bhagwan Ram deserve? What happened to him? Where did Sita Ma? Yesterday, what I had to go to Delhi for yesterday was Sita Nomi. And there was a very special inauguration of a Sita Katha. So where did Sita deserve what happened? Where did Bhagwan Ram deserve what happened? Where did Prahlad deserve what happened to him? Where did Bhagwan Krishna deserve the childhood that he had? And yet, in all of these cases, where did Dhruv deserve it? Right? Whoever you choose, pick any of these divine incarnations. And every one of them has a story of significantly greater struggle than what almost any of us has to go through in our lifetime. And I believe that we are given these to show us and teach us how to be resilient. How not to believe that just because we're a good person, suddenly that means that the universe is just going to bow at our feet and do whatever we say and love us and appreciate us. And the world is operating in its own karmic way. Somebody yelling at you, accusing you, okay. Well, at least it's not Kansa, right? I mean, at least they're not absolutely committed to killing you in whatever way necessary. So the first, and I think perhaps for many of us it becomes the first and the final step, is just realizing, okay, so this is just my challenge. And if being a good person, even being God on earth, right? I mean, however good we become, we can only strive to be like Bhagwan Ram or like Sita. I mean, they are the epitome of, right? I mean, forget the divinity of them. They are portrayed as the epitome of perfection. As a father, as a king, as a brother, as a son, as a wife, as a mother, as a queen. So we strive to live like them, but even being who they are, and then you add in being these divine incarnations. When there's that much struggle and strife. I mean, Sita Ma basically had almost nothing but struggle and strife. And I think that they're given to us on purpose to help us learn. I mean, it's not that she had to go through some karmic thing or that Bhagwan Ram had to go through his put on a carb. They're here to teach us that, life is a battle. And whether it's the battle of Mahabharat, the battle of Lanka, or the battle of what's going on in your office place, or your family, or your own mind. But how do we live that? And so when you find yourself in a situation, as he said, someone's criticizing you, they're yelling, they're blaming. Well, so first of all, if you subscribe to the Hindu scriptures, think of that. If not, think of the life of Jesus Christ, right? Think of the life of Moses and the Jews. I mean, whatever your religion is, there's certainly no shortage of stories of the great masters, the leaders, the prophets, going through struggle and strife that, again, far surpasses our own. And then, if that's not enough, in many cases, hopefully that will be enough, but if it's not enough, recognize that the person who is doing this to you, think of them as a sick person. I don't mean that in a critical, judgmental way, but think literally as though they had a disease. Because to lose your temper like that is a dis-ease. It's a lack of ease. And then think about it as though someone who were sick were coughing and sneezing near you. Right? Now, obviously, you don't want to get sick. But you recognize that they're not coughing and sneezing in order to make you sick. It's just they can't help it because they're sick, so they're coughing and they're sneezing. In the same way, these people who are yelling, screaming, blaming, they've got a dis-ease inside, and it is coming out of them in words rather than in coughing. But it's the same thing. They're basically vomiting on you. It's like somebody ate something bad, you happen to stand too near to them, you get vomited on. Well, in the same way, when someone's got a dis-ease in the mind, it may not be food they're vomiting, it's emotions, it's words, it's that energy. But essentially, you have simply gotten too close to someone who is dis-eased. And of course, the first thing is to ask and to figure out, how quickly can I get out of this situation? Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you are sitting in an airplane, strapped in next to somebody who only once the plane takes off you realize is coughing and sneezing. What do? Well, you do whatever you can to protect yourself in that moment. And in that case, what do? You make sure your mask is on. You turn on the fan overhead. You turn your face the other way. When you land, you take a lot of vitamin C. Well, in this situation, how can you protect yourself, your emotional, mental, spiritual immunity? You breathe very deeply. You anchor yourself in the truth of yourself so that what someone is vomiting on you does not become your truth of yourself. And you very clearly work on your internal, emotional, psychological, mental, spiritual immunity. And you pray for this person because they are dis-eased. In the same way that, once you feel safe yourself, say a prayer for the guy next to you. He shouldn't be dying of COVID or TB or something horrible. Like, God, let it just be a, run-of-the-mill cold. Take care of the guy. So in the same way, you can pray for that person. Because if they're spewing it on you, it means that's what they've got inside. So take care of yourself, pray for them, and realize this is This is the scripture, the epic of your own life. It's your own war, you've got to fight it. Beautiful. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, everyone. Beautiful day to our family joining us online from around the world. I look so forward to being together with you all again tomorrow. And so much love.
Saviturvare